China has marked 70 years of communism with a massive show of force. Now, the display of military hardware and troops in Beijing was overseen by President Xi Jinping. To take us through the celebrations of the 70th anniversary of the formation of the Communist Party, I'm now joined by Patrick Falk, our correspondent in China. Thanks very much indeed for joining us, Patrick. I would imagine if we know the way the Chinese put on a show, today has been pretty impressive.
Yeah, you could say this is the biggest show of its kind ever to take place in China. A big, big day for the entire country and everyone in celebratory mood. There was, of course, a massive pageant that took place with lots of colour, a lot of music and, of course, a lot of military might. We heard President Xi Jinping earlier talk about no country being able to shake the foundations of this great nation and to prevent its people from developing. And we also got a glimpse of China's nuclear capabilities. That was one of the key focuses today. We got a look at the DF-41 intercontinental ballistic missile for the first time. People were keeping a very close eye on that. It is said to be the most powerful weapon of its kind in the world, with the range to cover the whole of the United States. Earlier in the year, in a July defense white paper, China did actually say that its goal was to maintain security through nuclear deterrence. At the same time, though, it said that today wasn't necessarily just about an aggressive show of force. It was also about showing the modernization of China's military. And it is, as I say, a very big day indeed for the whole country.
So explain for our viewers, because in most countries there's a separation between a political party and the state. But I guess in China, the Communist Party is one and the same thing with the state, and hence the big celebration with government force.
Yeah, that's right. This is all very much about showing the strength of the Communist Party, which has been in control, if you like, for the last 70 years. Notably, it has lasted 1 year longer than the Soviet Union. It is now the longest running party in leadership in the world after North Korea's Workers' Party. But Xi Jinping, notably earlier in the year, did say that holding on to power wasn't necessarily guaranteed. And as we know, China is facing a lot of headwinds. The events that were taking place in Beijing today were in stark contrast to what is happening in Hong Kong, where there is a serious unrest and serious opposition to the Communist Party's authority over China. And also, China, of course, is facing a very tough trade battle with the United States, something that's been going on for several months now, and is likely to last for for quite a while ahead. And on top of that, China facing huge economic challenges. Its growth rate has slowed to the lowest rate in 30 years, and that is something that policymakers are trying to get to grips with. But as I say, today was very much about celebrating China's achievements over the last 70 years, in particular over the last 30 years, when its economy has opened up and has developed to become an economic powerhouse.
We'll talk about Hong Kong just now, but just taking a look at China over 70 years, you talk about the growth in the economy, and I just wonder, what has life been like for the average Chinese person? How has it changed over the years? Stereotypically, when we watch movies, it was about people riding bicycles, wearing Maoist suits back in the day. But if you go to places like Shanghai now in particular, you might mistake yourself and think perhaps you're in America.
Yeah, and to an extent, the parade today was designed to say that China really is not that stereotypical country that one might imagine. It is very much a modern and developed economy, and not just militarily. And when you ask about what people's experience of life is like, you know, here in Beijing, this is a modern and vibrant city, and people enjoy a high standard of living. But at the same time, there is a challenge in that there is a growing wealth divide in the country between these coastal cities like Shanghai, for instance, where you know, the same sort of experience is still very different for rural Chinese, and that is a challenge for the government, trying to bridge that divide between rural and urban China. It's among the many challenges that the country faces. But essentially, people are, as I say, very proud of the country's achievements, and people are quite happy, of course, with the economic development that China's experienced over the last 3 decades in particular.
All right, so I suppose the big dampener for Beijing was what's been happening in Hong Kong today. And we've heard that one protester has been shot in the chest. So when this Communist Party came into power, the Hong Kong story was still many, many decades away. It has happened. Britain has given Hong Kong back to China. And now this story is unfolding, and I suppose it's a difficult one for Beijing.
Yeah, that's right. This is something that Beijing hasn't necessarily focused on particularly today. People are in a celebratory mood. They're not trying to let what's happening in Hong Kong cast a shadow over the celebrations. But, you know, it certainly is very much in stark contrast to what's happening here in Beijing. One country, two very different scenes, if you like. As you say, someone was shot earlier today with a live round, as far as we understand. We still don't know the condition of the victim, but as far as we know, he is in hospital right now. And this is a challenge for China in particular. You know, one of the things that China's trying to do is to consolidate control over what it sees as its sovereign territory, and it's making territories like Hong Kong extremely uncomfortable. But at the same time, you know, when we talk about you know, what China's trying to achieve, it talks often about the humiliation that the country went through as a result of the Opium Wars, and taking back Hong Kong is a huge sort of a matter of pride for the Chinese, and it's been a difficult relationship between the two since the handover in 1997, and it looks as though the situation is going to be a complication for China moving forward. But you know, this is something that China wants to see Hong Kong being part of the country, and they are proud to maintain its vision of one China.
All right, perhaps finally, taking a look at the future. China for a long time had this one-child policy, and that's changed the population dynamics, an aging population. And I suppose this is something that they're trying to start to address. And what does the future for China look like? Do we have any idea what lies ahead?
Well, that is a very interesting point that you raised there. Of course, it has scrapped the one-child policy. China is experiencing an aging population, much like a lot of East Asia. When we talk about Korea and Hong Kong and Japan, these are things that are being experienced in those places as well. And no doubt it now wants to grow its population to some extent, or to reduce its aging population. And this is something that is important for the economy as much as anything else.
All right, Patrick, we're going to have to leave it. Thanks so much indeed for that update on what's happening in China, celebrating 70 years of the Chinese Communist Party, a country that's really grown in leaps and bounds over the years, second largest economy in the world now, powerhouse nation. Not just militarily, but in other areas as well. They've, of course, sent man into space as well. Very soon, who knows, onto the moon as well. Palace.